My stepson burned my disabled daughter's entire sticker collection, so I burned his whole summer in front of everyone. I walked into the living room and found my daughter shaking on the floor. She kept touching her empty shelves like she was trying to wake up from a nightmare. Her sticker books, her boxes, her folders, all gone. And when she finally looked at me, all she said was, "He took them." The way she said it made my blood run cold. Not angry, not even sad yet, just this small, broken whisper, like she couldn't quite believe what had happened to her. Her hands were still moving across the carpet where her collection used to be, fingers tracing the ghost of something that had been there for years. I dropped to my knees beside her and pulled her into my arms, and that's when she started to cry, really cry, these deep shaking sobs that made her whole body convulse against mine. My daughter is 13. She has sensory processing issues and moderate autism, and for the last 7 years, those stickers have been her entire world. Not in the way a neurotypical kid might like stickers, no. These were her safe place. When she got overwhelmed at school, she'd come home and organize them by color, by theme, by size. When she had a meltdown, I could sit with her and we'd trade duplicates or look through her binders, and within 20 minutes, she'd be calm again, focused, happy. Some of those stickers came from her grandmother before she passed. Some she'd saved allowance for months to buy. Some she'd traded with other collectors online, kids she'd never met but trusted because they understood what these things meant, and now they were gone. I tried to ask her what happened, but she just kept saying, "He took them, over and over, rocking back and forth. I knew exactly who he was. My stepson, 16 years old, been living with us for 2 years since I married his father, and from day one he's treated my daughter like she was an inconvenience. He'd never been violent before, never destructive, but there was always this edge to him, this cruelty that came out in small ways. Comments about how she was weird, mocking the way she stimmed, rolling his eyes when she needed extra time to process something. I should have seen it coming. Looking back now, there were signs. The way he'd bump into her in the hallway and make it look accidental. The way he'd eat the specific foods she liked before she could get to them, knowing she had safe foods and couldn't just eat anything. The way he'd talk loudly on purpose when he knew she was having a sensory overload day. Little cruelties that his father dismissed as sibling rivalry, as normal teenage behavior, as me being too sensitive about my daughter's needs. But this was different. This was calculated destruction. I helped her to the couch and told her I'd be right back. She grabbed my arm, panic in her eyes, and I promised her I wasn't going anywhere far. Just outside, just for a minute. She let go, slowly, her fingers leaving white marks on my skin where she'd gripped so tight, and I walked through the kitchen and out the back door into the late afternoon heat. It was one of those brutally hot June days where the air feels thick enough to choke on, the kind of day where you can smell the asphalt baking and see heat waves rising off parked cars. I remember noticing these details, cataloging them because my brain was trying to process anything other than what had just happened inside. He was standing by the driveway with this smug little smirk on his face like he'd just won some game. His hands were in his pockets, shoulders relaxed, one foot kicked up against the garage door. When he saw me coming, he didn't even have the decency to look worried. He just stood there, waiting, that same expression locked on his face like a mask. I didn't even have to ask. He spoke first. Maybe next time she won't act like a baby over a stupid camera. My ears started ringing. The world tilted slightly to the left, and I had to plant my feet to keep steady. A camera. This was about a camera. 3 days ago, my daughter had been taking pictures in the backyard with this little vintage Polaroid camera her therapist gave her as part of her treatment. It helps her process emotions, gives her something to focus on when words don't work. My stepson had asked to borrow it, said he wanted to take pictures at some party, and she'd said no. It was hers. It was part of her therapy, and he'd gotten mad, stormed off, slammed his bedroom door so hard, a picture frame fell off the hallway wall. I thought that was the end of it. I'd even talked to my husband about it that night, told him we needed to address his son's anger issues, and he'd said the same thing he always said, boys will be boys. He's just frustrated with the adjustment. Give him time. I was wrong. We were both wrong. Where are the stickers? I asked. My voice came out flat, cold, nothing like the screaming I wanted to do. He shrugged, just shrugged, like I'd asked him about the weather. Gone. Then he laughed. He actually laughed, this short, sharp bark of a sound that made my hands curl into fists at my sides. He looked me dead in the eye and said, I dumped them in car oil with my friends and set them on fire. Should have seen how fast they went up. Some of them made these cool colors when they burned. I felt something inside me break, some fundamental piece of who I thought I was, but I didn't scream. Not yet. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at this kid, this child I'd tried so hard to make feel welcome in our home, and realized I was looking at someone who felt absolutely nothing about what he'd done. He thought it was funny. He thought destroying 7 years of my daughter's life, her comfort, her Her joy, her carefully organized safe place, was some kind of justified revenge for not getting to borrow a camera for a few hours. "Go inside," I said. He rolled his eyes, dramatic, like I was being unreasonable. "Whatever, you're not my mom anyway." He walked past me, shoulder brushing mine hard enough that I had to step back to keep my balance, and disappeared into the house. I stood there in the driveway for a long time, staring at the oil stain on the concrete, the black smudge where I assumed they'd done it, where they'd poured oil over years of my daughter's happiness and lit a match. I could still smell it, actually, that acrid, burnt plastic smell mixed with motor oil, and I felt my stomach turn. When I finally went back inside, my daughter was exactly where I'd left her, curled up on the couch, staring at nothing. She looked at me when I sat down beside her, and I saw the question in her eyes before she asked it. Did he throw them away? I didn't know how to answer that without falling apart. How do you tell your daughter that someone didn't just throw her things away? They destroyed them deliberately, maliciously, while laughing with friends. How do you explain that level of cruelty to a 13-year-old who's never understood why people are mean in the first place? She operates on logic, on rules, on the assumption that people generally try to be kind because that's what makes sense. This didn't make sense to her. It couldn't. I pulled out my phone and called my husband. He was at work, some sales conference 3 hours away, and he answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. I could hear voices in the background, someone laughing, the clink of glasses. I told him what happened, all of it. The stickers, the burning, what his son had said, the oil, the friends, everything. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it kept cracking, words tumbling over each other, and I had to stop twice to breathe. He was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed. Not shocked, not angry, just annoyed. He's 16. Kids do stupid stuff. Don't overreact. Don't overreact. I repeated those words in my head, testing them, trying to understand how he could say them right now. I told him our daughter's entire collection was gone, that she was devastated, that his son had destroyed something irreplaceable, that this wasn't normal teenager behavior. This was deliberate cruelty. And he sighed again, heavier this time, and said, "Just talk to him. He'll learn from this. I'll deal with it when I get home tomorrow. Learn from this." Like it was a teachable moment. Like empathy was something you picked up after making a mistake, not something you should have before burning a disabled child's most precious possessions. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hand was shaking so hard, I nearly dropped the phone. My daughter was watching me, reading my face the way she always did when she couldn't read the situation. "Is Dad mad at me?" she asked, and my heart shattered into even smaller pieces. "No, baby, he's not mad at you. This isn't your fault." But she didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, that internalized blame she always carried, the assumption that when bad things happened, it must be because she'd done something wrong. Years of therapy, years of me and her grandmother and her teachers telling her that she was perfect, exactly as she was, and one act of cruelty had undone so much of that progress. I sat with her until she fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from crying. Her face was blotchy and swollen, and even in sleep she looked distressed, her forehead creased, her hands twitching. Then I went upstairs to my bedroom and closed the door and let myself feel it. The rage, the grief, the absolute betrayal of realizing my husband, the man I'd married, the man who'd promised to love and protect my daughter like his own, didn't think what his son did was that bad, didn't think it warranted real consequences, thought I was overreacting. I'd married him 2 years ago after my daughter's father passed away from cancer. He'd seemed kind, patient, understanding about my daughter's needs. He'd taken us to parks, helped with homework, sat through therapy appointments without complaint. His son had been difficult from the start, but my husband assured me it was just adjustment issues, that blending families took time, that we'd get through it together. But we hadn't gotten through it. We just learned to exist around the problem, sweeping his son's behavior under the rug, making excuses, hoping things would improve on their own. But I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was planning, because I knew something nobody else in this house knew. That summer camp my stepson worshipped, the one he bragged about to his friends every single day. The elite sports camp 3 states away that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The camp he'd already told everyone at school he was definitely going to, posted about on Instagram, made a whole countdown for on his bedroom wall. The camp that was supposedly going to get him noticed by college scouts. The one he'd been talking about since March. The one he'd made his entire summer identity about. I'd paid for it, not his dad. Not from some joint account. From my money, my income. The money I made from my job that I worked 45 hours a week, while also being the only one who took my daughter to therapy appointments and doctor visits and helped her with homework. My husband had mentioned the camp cost back in February, had hemmed and hawed about whether they could afford it, and I'd offered to cover it. A peace offering, I'd thought. A way to show my stepson that I cared about his happiness too. And he was about to lose it, but I didn't want to do it quietly. I didn't want to just cancel the camp and tell him later. No, I wanted him to feel it. I wanted him to understand, really understand, what it feels like when something you love gets ripped away in an instant by someone who doesn't care about you at all. So I waited. I waited until the next afternoon when his friends came over. The same two boys who'd helped him burn the stickers. I recognized them from the oil stain in the driveway, their shoes. I'd seen them leaving that afternoon, laughing, smelling like smoke. They came through the front door like they owned the place, loud and careless, heading straight for the backyard where they usually hung out. I called all three of them into the kitchen. My stepson looked confused at first, then scared when he saw my face. Good, he should be scared. His friends stood there looking awkward, shifting their weight, glancing at each other like they were waiting for permission to leave. One of them, the taller one with the bleached hair, kept looking at his phone. The other one, shorter, with acne covering his jawline, was staring at the floor. I didn't care. They were part of this. They'd helped him. They'd laughed. They'd watched my daughter's treasures burn and thought it was entertainment. I held up the camp envelope, the big manila envelope with the camp logo on it, the one that had been sitting on the counter for weeks, the one he looked at every morning while eating breakfast, like it was a promise of something better. Inside was the receipt, the deposit confirmation, the acceptance letter, the schedule, all of it. He recognized it instantly. His eyes went wide. The color drained from his face. Please don't, he whispered. I want your friends to hear this too, I said. I told them, calmly, exactly what he'd taken from my daughter, how she'd been collecting those stickers since she was 6 years old, how she organized them every weekend, how she traded them online with other collectors, how she knew every single one by heart, how some of them were gifts from her grandmother who died when she was 8, how some of them she'd saved her allowance for months to buy, how opening a new pack of stickers was the highlight of her week, how she smiled and stimmed and made these little happy sounds that she never made for anything else. I told them how she'd been diagnosed at 5, how hard she'd worked in therapy, how much progress she'd made, how those stickers were part of her coping mechanisms, her regulation tools, her safe space in a world that often felt too loud and too bright and too much. I told them about the rare holographic set she'd gotten for her birthday last year, the vintage puffy stickers from the 90s that her grandmother had saved from when my daughter's aunt was little, the limited edition series she'd waited in an online queue for 3 hours to purchase. And then I looked at my stepson and said, "You destroyed something priceless to her. Now I'm taking something priceless to you." He started sobbing, full-on sobbing, these loud, gasping cries that made his friends step back. "No, please, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I'll never do it again. Please don't. Please, I'll apologize. I'll buy her new stickers, please." I didn't say a word. I ripped the camp envelope in half, then in quarters, then into pieces so small they looked like confetti, and I let them fall to the kitchen floor like snow. The sound of tearing paper filled the kitchen, over and over, methodical and final. His friends froze. One of them whispered, "Dude," but nothing else came after it. The other one was backing toward the door. My stepson screamed, "No, please, please, you can't do that. That's not fair." "You burned her childhood," I said. "Now I'm burning your summer." He ran outside crying. His friends followed him, silent now, not laughing anymore. I heard them in the backyard, my stepson's voice high and panicked, his friends trying to calm him down. I stood in the kitchen surrounded by shredded camp documents and felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just this cold, empty determination that I'd done exactly what needed to be done. That night, my husband stormed into the house. He'd driven home early, left the conference, made the 3-hour drive in 2.5 hours based on the texts my stepson had sent him. He started yelling before the door even closed, before his keys hit the counter, before he'd even seen me. "What the hell did you do? Do you have any idea what you've done? You humiliated him in front of his friends, over stickers. You ruined everything. That camp was his future. College scouts go there. This was his chance." I pulled out my phone. I didn't say anything, just opened my photos and held it up. My neighbor had texted them to me that morning. Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who lived next door and had known my daughter since she was a baby. She'd been in her garden the day it happened and heard the commotion. She'd looked over the fence and taken pictures. Not to be nosy, she said, but because something felt wrong, because she heard boys laughing and smelled burning plastic and wanted evidence in case something bad was happening. The pictures showed everything. My stepson and his two friends in our driveway dumping my daughter's sticker books into a metal tray, bottles of car oil, a lighter, the flames, and the three of them standing there watching it burn, laughing. One photo caught my stepson's face perfectly, that same smug expression he'd had when I confronted him, like he was proud of what he'd done. My husband stopped talking mid-sentence. His mouth was still open, words caught somewhere in his throat, and he just stared at the screen. I swiped through the photos, slowly, making sure he saw every single one. 7 photos total. 7 pieces of evidence that his son wasn't just being a stupid teenager, he was being deliberately, maliciously cruel. "If you want to defend him," I said, "defend this." He didn't say another word. He took his phone and wallet and left. left, slept at a hotel, didn't come back until the next evening, and when he did, he wouldn't look at me. The next day, the school called. Apparently, the boys had posted videos of the burning on their private group chat. Someone leaked them, multiple someones. By lunch, half the school had seen them, and by the time the final bell rang, parents were getting calls from the administration. The counselor, Ms. Rodriguez, called me personally. She called it bullying a disabled child, used those exact words, said there would be an investigation, that this kind of behavior violated school policy, that they took incidents like this extremely seriously. She said they'd be meeting with all 3 boys and their families, that there would be consequences, that the videos had been reported to the district office. Parents got involved, teachers got involved. The principal personally called me to apologize and assure me they were handling it. The next afternoon, I was picking up my daughter from therapy when I saw them in the school parking lot, my stepson and his 2 friends, standing by a car, surrounded by parents. The friends' parents, specifically, and they were furious, screaming. One mother, a tall woman in yoga clothes, got so close to my stepson's face that he backed into the car trying to get away from her. I heard fragments, cruel, disturbed. My son will not be friends with someone who would do this to a disabled girl. What kind of person burns a child's belongings? The other father was on his phone, pacing, his face red. I found out later he was a lawyer, and he was threatening to sue if his son faced any consequences for being associated with what my stepson had done. I watched from across the lot. My stepson stood there shaking, arms wrapped around himself, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Other kids were watching. Some were filming on their phones. Teachers were coming out to intervene, trying to get the parents to lower their voices, asking everyone to move the conversation inside. That's when I walked over. I had the shredded camp envelope in a little plastic bag, the pieces I'd swept up from the kitchen floor. I'd kept them, not really knowing why. Maybe as evidence, maybe as a reminder, maybe just because I wasn't ready to throw them away yet. He saw me coming, and his face went white. He looked at me like I was about to finish him, like I was there to make it worse. And maybe I was. Maybe that's exactly what I was doing. I held the bag up, high enough for every parent, every teacher, every kid nearby to see, and said loud enough to carry across the parking lot, "This is what happens when you destroy something that wasn't yours." The parking lot went silent. Even the yelling parents stopped mid-sentence. Everyone turned to look at me, then at the bag, then at my stepson. I dropped the bag at his feet. The shredded paper spilled out onto the asphalt, scattering in the breeze, white and blue confetti against the dark pavement, and I walked away without looking back. I got in my car where my daughter was waiting, and I drove us home. My daughter asked me that night why I'd done it, why I'd ripped up the camp envelope, why I'd done it in front of his friends, why I'd brought it to school. She'd heard about it from another student. News travels fast when you're in 8th grade, especially when videos are involved, especially when it's drama this big. I told her the truth, that what he did to her was cruel, and that cruel people need to understand consequences, that I would always protect her, no matter what, that she didn't deserve what happened, and that I was sorry I couldn't prevent it, that sometimes people hurt others because they're angry about something else, and that's not an excuse, but maybe it's an explanation. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Do you think he'll ever say sorry?" I didn't know how to answer that, so I just held her hand and told her that sometimes people surprise you, but that she didn't owe him forgiveness, even if he did apologize. 2 weeks later, my husband asked for a separation, said we clearly had different values when it came to parenting, that I'd been too harsh, that his son was traumatized now, that the whole school incident had made things worse, that his son was seeing a therapist because of what I'd done. I told him his son had traumatized our daughter first, and he said it wasn't the same thing, that his son's actions were impulsive, but mine were calculated, that I'd humiliated a child. I asked him how old his son needed to be before we could call him accountable. He didn't have an answer. We're divorced now. It took 8 months to finalize, and it was ugly in ways I didn't expect. He fought me on custody even though my daughter wanted nothing to do with him or his son. He tried to claim I was an unfit mother, that I'd demonstrated cruel behavior, that I was teaching our daughter the wrong lessons about conflict resolution. Eventually, his lawyer convinced him to drop it, probably because of the videos, probably because no judge was going to side with the parent defending the kid who burned a disabled child's possessions for revenge. My daughter still asks about her stickers sometimes. She started a new collection, but it's different now, smaller, more careful. She doesn't organize them the same way, doesn't talk about them with the same excitement. She keeps them in a locked box under her bed instead of on the shelves. Something was taken from her that day that we can't get back, some kind of innocence or trust or joy. Her therapist says it's trauma, says we're working through it, says she's making progress, but she's okay. We're okay. We have a small apartment now, just the 2 of us, and it's quiet and it's safe, and nobody makes her feel like she's too much or too weird or too anything. She has her own room and she's decorated it exactly how she wants, and some days I hear her laughing in there, really laughing, and it sounds like hope. My stepson sent me a letter 6 months ago. His dad must have given him my address. It was an apology, I think, though it read more like something his therapist told him to write. He said he understood what he did was wrong, that he'd been angry about other things and took it out on her, that he was working on himself. He said he'd been jealous of the attention she got, of how I always seemed to prioritize her needs, of how his dad had changed after we got married. He said burning the stickers was the worst thing he'd ever done, and he thinks about it every day. He didn't ask for forgiveness. At least he got that part right. I haven't responded. I don't think I will. Maybe one day, if my daughter ever wants to talk to him, I'll support that decision. But it's not my apology to accept. It never was. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if destroying his summer in front of his friends, bringing the evidence to school, making sure everyone knew what he'd done was too much. If I should have just canceled the camp quietly and let it go. If I taught my daughter the wrong lesson about revenge versus justice. But then I remember my daughter's face that day, the way she touched those empty shelves like she could bring them back through sheer will, the way she whispered he took them, like she couldn't comprehend that kind of cruelty. And I know I'd do it again, exactly the same way, because she needed to know that someone would fight for her, that what happened to her mattered, that the world wouldn't just shrug and say kids do stupid stuff. She's in high school now, freshman year. She's making friends. Slowly, she joined an art club. She still sees her therapist every Tuesday. She still has hard days where she doesn't want to go to school, where everything feels too loud and too bright and too much. But she also has good days, and those are getting more frequent. Last week, she came home and told me about a group project she did where she got to use her photography, and she smiled when she talked about it. A real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months, and that's enough. That has to be enough. If anything else happens, I might update. But for now, we're just living our lives, the two of us, and we're doing okay. Better than okay some days. We're building something new, something that's just ours, and nobody can take that away from us. If you read all this, thanks. It means more than you know.